question down there. I have a person with a microphone.
I think microphones are being wandered around. Yes, there's a microphone there, going in someone's hand.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Bruce. Thank you very much for your talk. My name is Henrik Molke. I'm an investigative reporter with the Danish newspaper Information. I cover security issues. I wrote about how the NSA spied on the COP15 climate summit in Copenhagen. Denmark's a very small country, and we have a historical tie to the US and to the NSA. And right now we have a development in this country where security is going towards military and the sort of one-point architecture model that we see kind of spreading around Europe and in most of the governments of the world. And so I was interested in hearing your perspective on Denmark, how businesses and individuals position themselves when we have a government that reacted to our sovereignty being breached, a very important, prestigious project basically being I wouldn't know how to phrase it correctly, but the US seemingly didn't play by the books during this conference. That Denmark put a lot of effort into it.
You know, I think we just have different books.
Right. So where do these companies that have a government that's in a difficult spot? I mean, honestly, it's very hard when you have a partnership with someone who mistreats you one day and loves you the next. You know, it's a problem. How do you see this difficult position that the government, but even more so the businesses and individuals in Denmark are in? Thank you.
Yeah, it is difficult, and I tried to talk about that. I don't know about Denmark specifically, but there is the problem that, I mean, what I said at the end, that almost you have to pick your enemy. That surveillance, it's like when you pick your email provider. Do you want to give Google all your data? Do you want to give Apple all your data? Or Microsoft, right? I mean, there's almost no way to have email without someone spying on you, so you pick who you want. And unfortunately, I think that's the same case nationally as well. That we have to decide. I mean, what I really want is for us to start passing laws making this illegal. That we have to recognize, I mean, the long-term solution is to recognize that security is more important than surveillance. That we are all better off with an internet that is safe from surveillance by anybody than vulnerable surveillance by everybody. But short term, you know, it's going to be a matter of who do you mistrust the least. But I do worry about, you know, anything that has single points of failure and single points of eavesdropping. And the concentration of our data at Google, I think, is very troubling. In some ways, more troubling than the NSA. And Google knows what kind of porn all of you like. That's a little freaky. Now, they're not doing anything with it now, but they do know, because that's how we search for it. And to have a company like Google, or a few companies, know so much, and to move that data, you know, out of Denmark into the US, into other countries, you know, we don't know where our data is, so we don't know what legal rules are it's operating under. We also don't know if the countries are following those legal rules. And we learn again and again, not just the US or the UK, but other countries as well, are breaking sort of all of the rules they have. And we're seeing suits about that in all sorts of countries. So this is, you know, we're in the middle of, I think, a very big problem. And I don't have obvious solutions. See a hand there.
So if the solution is a political one and introducing new legislation which is constantly being broken, how do we get around that problem, and how should we actually monitor and track what the intelligence services, which are obviously not abiding to the law, how should we handle that problem?
You know, I wish I had an answer to that, right? And that's bigger than this. I mean, we're, you know, I think in a lot of areas of society, governments are ignoring laws when they are convenient. In democratic countries. Now, how we deal with that, I mean, the United States has its own particular type of stagnation in government, inability to do anything real. You know, and I don't know the answers. Right? These are questions we have to solve. They are for people who are, so I think, you know, way more politically savvy than I am. You know, we know that oversight works for a time. You know, we know that in the United States today, oversight over intelligence is completely broken. How we fix that, I don't know how I think we do, but I think we have to. I don't have any good answers as to how. You know, and the hard part is, what do we as individuals and companies do in the meantime? Right? How do we maintain our security, our integrity, you know, while these major battles are being played out? Because in a lot of cases, we're just pawns here. Right? You know, we are collateral damage. And that also makes it harder. So a hand on this side somewhere.
Over here.
Ken Simonsen from Nørrebro today. I wonder, is it possible to move out of the U.S., if you move out of the United Kingdom, and in that way for the companies to not follow these legislations in those countries? Is that a strategy, and is that pursued by the companies so that they can maintain their business? Because I understand from you that business is going down because they don't trust American security.
And a couple of answers. In a lot of cases, it's really hard to move out of. It's very hard to geographically locate data specifically, especially in cloud services. You know, we want geographic dispersal. That's really a security mechanism. Right? It's reliability. You know, countries are talking about building private clouds. Germany, Brazil. Now, this really breaks one of the models. One of the fundamental pieces of the internet is that it's international. It's not going to work for a lot of things. You could have a Denmark-only Facebook, but you can't have any friends outside of Denmark, which might, you know, might be kind of boring. I mean, if you're a country like China, you'd largely do that. I mean, there are domestic-only search engines, domestic-only social networking platforms, domestic-only communication systems. But, you know, the people in China who use them know that they're just getting a Chinese-approved subset of the internet that isn't as interesting as the global internet. You know, so in some cases you can, and if it's, you know, storing your corporate data, I mean, of course you can store it in Denmark only, but a lot of our systems are inherently international, which means that you can't. A lot of other systems means you don't want to. So I'm not a big fan. I also worry that, you know, once the systems become country only, the NSA rules are suddenly much easier to get access to that data. And it's really perverse that if the NSA is using some of its, you know, U.S. authorities, it's under more restrictions than just went in to some other country and grab the data, which, you know, there are basically no rules. So I know these solutions are happening. I'm not a fan of them. I understand why they're happening, but I don't like this balkanization. I think it hurts the internet. I'd rather fix the problem inside the U.S., but given that I don't think I'm going to, I'm not going to point fingers at someone who tries that solution. But especially a country like, you know, any of the, you know, the NATO, the 8 Eyes, the U.S. partners, there seems to be a lot of spying on each other, quid pro quo going on. So I'm not convinced, you know, that helps. It's very hard to tell how much of the outrage in Europe is real and how much is manufactured. You know, for France to be upset that the U.S. is spying seems kind of funny, because I know France does a lot of that as well. But you know, and I don't know how much of it was truly unknown by the other governments, or they're responding because they have to, because now that it's public, their citizens expect. It's really hard for me to figure out how much of the, I'm going to call it conspiracy, I don't know if that's the right word, is truly international. But there seems to be a lot of data sharing, not just the Five Eyes. People know the Five Eyes. Five Eyes is US, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand. Think of it as the rich English language speaking countries club. Right there, that is where sort of the most intimate sharing happens. Then you have something called the 8 Eyes that adds 3 countries, I forget which. And then you have the 13 Eyes, and you have these sort of spheres of eavesdropping data sharing. And it does seem like those spheres use each other to get around their own country's laws. Right? that it's illegal for me in a country to spy on my own people. I ask you to, and you do it for me, and I exchange spy on you, and we trade data. Right? That sort of thing. I think that happens more than the press is reporting. And I think something that's also a very big deal. Because I don't think you should be able to get around your laws that way. I see a hand over there.
Hello, my name is Johan from Copenhagen University. I have a question about encryption at a more personal level. It was revealed recently, I believe, from some of Edward Snowden's slides, that as soon as you start to begin encrypting your personal conversations and so on, you become a person of interest in the eyes of the surveilling government. So, yeah, it makes it tricky. So what's your stance on that?
So I mean, that's been reported a lot, that the act of encrypting is in itself suspicious. I think too much is being made of that. Yes, it does seem to be true that all encrypted data is collected. But that doesn't make it a bad thing. Right? That even though encrypting data makes you a subject, not encrypting it makes you even more vulnerable. And for all of you that don't need to encrypt, think of it this way. The more data you encrypt, the more you're protecting people who need encryption to stay alive. Right? That the more of us who don't have to encrypt our data, the less it will be a red flag. And the reason it is a red flag is so little of it is out there. The more of it that's out there, the less that will be true. If everybody uses encryption all the time, then it becomes normal. Right? Encryption saves lives, not yours, it's somebody else's. So that's why we should do it. So even though that does seem to be true, that's only true to the extent that they can, and it is an effective way of culling. So I recommend encrypt anyway.
Question?
Yes, my name is Teddy Nielsen, and I'm coming from the public service.
Can you wave? Oh, there you are. Okay.
I have a question for you, Bruce. By the way, thank you for coming to Denmark. We've been following you for years, and it has been very interesting. My question is, isn't it because we've decided to use very free services on the internet, and by that, making us very vulnerable? And if we did it the otherwise, it would have been better. Because the more we pay for these services, we become even more concerned about our own security and our own privacy. And that's the first question. The other question is that I've read that some American companies actually have decided to be vulnerable or to work with the NSA in order to give them some backdoors in their software in order for them to sell this software knowing that they are backdoors to us others, and the NSA being able to get in contact with our data. Isn't that also a very irresponsible of these companies? What are we supposed to do about that?
Yeah, what you're supposed to do with that is live with it, unfortunately. Irresponsible, it's hard to say. I mean, we are seeing legal compulsions. I mean, the NSA has a lot of different ways of influencing companies. Right? We've seen asking nicely. Right? NSA goes to AT&T and says, we want to spy on the internet. And AT&T says, great, put your stuff in that closet over there, don't tell anybody. We've seen bribes where companies have gotten money as part of contracts to insert backdoors, make changes, facilitate eavesdropping. We've seen threats, and we've seen outright legal compulsion. Now, I do believe that it is responsible for any company to fight those, and we are seeing that companies have. There was a big lawsuit, mostly in secret, that Yahoo went through with the government to try to protect their users. But in the end, when the court says you must make this change to hurt your users and then lie about it, the companies have no choice, and the fault at that point is with the law. right? That the U.S. law allows that. That the real abomination of that story is that that is permissible under U.S. law, and that seems like it shouldn't be. And my belief is it isn't, and these are incorrect interpretations of the law. So there's a lot of outrage to go around. You know, what to do about it? I mean, this is the fundamental poison. We don't know. We don't know what to trust, right? At South by Southwest, Eric Schmidt, runs Google, said something like, "We're pretty sure that the NSA can't get user data." That's what we get. And when you think about it, the absolute best that Google could say is, we protect your data except for the ways we don't know about and the ways we legally can't tell you about. Right? That's the best you can get. That's a really lousy slogan. And there's nothing we can do about it, except not use Google. Then the question is, who do we use? Who's better? And that gets us back into, you have to trust. You have to figure out who your enemy is. Because it's not just the NSA. I mean, does anybody believe that the Israeli security companies are less backdoored by Israel? Or the Russian security companies are less backdoored by Russia? Or that Chinese networking equipment is less backdoored? I certainly don't. Right? I mean, this is robustly bad. You know, so we have to fix this at a technical and political level before we can have assurance again that we have security. All right, I'm going to take one last question. Sorry, person in the back.
Okay, thank you. I'm Daniel Johansen from Cybox. We're working with e-privacy, and I just want to ask you a question about the political aspect of this. As I understand it, you see a solution that way, but here in Europe we have legislation that actually has been in force for several years, for example on tracking cookies. There is actually rules today requiring websites to ask the users' consent before they set those tracking cookies that NSA and many others are fond of. So the problem in Europe today is that only a very small percentage of the companies are actually complying with this legislation, and the authorities doesn't really seem to care. So my question is to you, where does that leave us if you think the political solution is the way to go?
Well, it leaves us nowhere. If in fact we're now in a world where the laws are not going to be enforced, where they'll be ignored, where we won't get legal assurances, we're done. I mean, we have built a surveillance state on the internet. We are all being tracked 24/7, where we go, who we talk to, what we do, what we care about. And if we cannot legally and technically protect our privacy, we have none. I mean, it's a lousy answer, but I have no other. Well, that was a fun ending. So, I brought a couple of these. I brought a couple of my books. I have books. This is my latest book. It's my previous one. I have 2 copies. I couldn't bring one for everybody. I did bring book flyers, which is like the thin version, and they're out there where the fruit is. Please take one, and I'll put these up there to help you look at them. I'll be around. I'm happy to take questions at the break, and have a good conference. Thanks for inviting me.